Okay, so get this. A rookie QB throws 5 touchdowns in the final seconds to win it. Talk about a wild week for the playoff picture, huh? You shared a couple articles from CBS Sports that break down the standings. And well, we're going to dive into those and give you all the need-to-know info so you can be the most knowledgeable fan at your holiday gatherings.
Yeah, Week 16 definitely had its share of surprises.
For sure. Like the Commanders beating the Eagles. That ending had me screaming. What really stood out to you from that game?
Well, what I find fascinating is that it wasn't even Daniels' first game-winning drive in the final 30 seconds. This season, he's done it twice. It's actually a rookie record.
Wow, that's some serious clutch playing,
Yeah.
especially for a rookie. 4th and 11, clock ticking down. He scrambles for the first down, then throws a laser for the game-winning touchdown. What does that say about the Commanders' future?
It's huge. Not only did they knock out the Cowboys and the 49ers from playoff contention, but they've got a real shot at the playoffs themselves now. And even if they don't make it, they've clearly found their quarterback of the future.
And speaking of rookie QBs making waves, how about Michael Penix Jr. for the Falcons? Benching Cousins to start a rookie in such an important game, that was a big gamble. But it looks like it paid off big time.
Definitely shows how the league is evolving, you know? How often do you see a team trust a rookie QB with a playoff spot on the line? What do you think? Are we going to see more teams start their rookie quarterbacks sooner, even in these high-pressure situations?
It's definitely a trend to watch. I mean, Penix Jr. looked so calm under pressure. He could have had even more touchdowns if it weren't for a few drop passes.
And don't forget, the Buccaneers lost to the Cowboys, so that puts Atlanta back on top of the NFC South.
Man, the NFC South has been a wild ride this season. But before we move on, we got to talk about the Detroit Lions. Coach Campbell's moldy bread speech after last week's injuries was pretty inspiring. Did you think they'd come out and dominate like that against the Bears?
It's amazing how this team just bounces back from adversity. It really speaks to their resilience and that next man up mentality that Coach Campbell has. Goff threw for over 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. Jahmyr Gibbs had over 100 rushing yards and a touchdown. They are not backing down from anyone.
And now they're tied with the Vikings for the top spot in the NFC North. That Week 18 matchup between them is going to be a must-watch.
You're telling me the Lions have the tiebreaker for now, but that final game could decide the entire division.
Okay, let's switch gears to the AFC. Maybe not as chaotic as the NFC, but some key races are getting pretty tight.
Yeah, definitely. Starting with the Chiefs, they're 1 win away from securing home field advantage throughout the playoffs. And remember, they already beat the Bills this season, so they have that head-to-head tiebreaker.
Another team making a statement this week, the Chargers. Taking down the Broncos, stopping them from clinching a playoff spot. I was curious what you thought about the impact of that win on other teams.
Well, that win definitely hurt the chances of teams like the Colts, Dolphins, and Bengals. They're all still fighting for that last wildcard spot. The AFC playoff picture is still anyone's game.
For sure. And speaking of tight races, the AFC North is a total nail-biter. The Ravens tied the Steelers at the top with a big win on Saturday.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Pittsburgh still has the tiebreaker because of their better conference record.
So their Week 17 game against the Chiefs could decide the entire division. The Ravens need to keep winning, too, if they want to stay in the race.
Absolutely. Every game from here on out is a playoff game for these teams.
Before we move on to the teams that are officially out, I got to talk about these rookie quarterbacks again. Penix Jr. and Daniels. You don't see 2 rookies making such a huge impact this late in the season every day, especially in these high-stakes games. What do you think this says about the state of the league?
It's definitely interesting to see. Maybe it's a sign that quarterbacks are coming into the league more prepared than ever, and they're not afraid of the big moments. Or maybe it's just these 2 guys are incredibly talented.
Yeah, maybe it's a bit of both. Whatever it is, it's definitely made this playoff race a lot more exciting.
Absolutely. It's added a whole new level of intrigue to these last few weeks.
All right, now let's talk about the teams whose playoff dreams are officially over. In the NFC, 4 teams were eliminated this week. The Cardinals, Cowboys, 49ers, and Saints. This is on top of the Bears, Panthers, and Giants, who were already out.
Yeah, tough break for those teams, but it just shows how competitive the NFC is this year.
And over the AFC, the list is even longer. The Raiders, Patriots, Titans, Jets, Jaguars, and Browns are out.
You know, it's interesting. The AFC has fewer teams eliminated overall, but the races for the top spots and the wild card are arguably even more intense than in the NFC.
Definitely. So with all that in mind, what stands out to you as the biggest story heading into these last 2 weeks? Is it Penix Jr.'s breakout performance for the Falcons or the Lions, defying the odds? Or maybe those nail-biting division races in both conferences? There's just so much to watch for as we head into the final stretch of the season.
It's funny you should mention the Lions. Their situation actually reminds me of another team that's exceeded expectations this year, the Commanders.
Oh, you're right. Nobody expected them to be in the playoff hunt this late in the season, especially after losing their starting quarterback.
Exactly. But here they are with a rookie quarterback leading the charge. Their win over the Eagles was a statement. They're not just happy to be in the conversation, they're ready to compete.
And Daniels has been playing with so much confidence. It's like he thrives under pressure.
I think it speaks to his preparation and his mentality. He seems to have that it factor that separates good quarterbacks from great ones.
It's interesting you say that, because it brings me back to something you mentioned earlier about the changing landscape of the quarterback position. Do you think the success of these rookie quarterbacks, Daniels and Penix Jr., will change the way teams approach drafting and developing quarterbacks in the future?
It's a good question. Traditionally, teams have been hesitant to throw rookie quarterbacks into the fire, especially when they have veteran options on the roster. But the success of Daniels and Penix Jr. could make teams rethink that approach.
It's almost like the league is shifting towards a win-now mentality, even when it comes to developing young quarterbacks.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment, and it makes sense. Why wait to see what you have in a young quarterback when you can potentially capitalize on their talent and energy right away?
It's certainly a trend to watch. Okay, so we've talked about the contenders, the pretenders, and the teams that are out of the playoff race. Before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I'd love to get your take on what you're most excited to see unfold in these final 2 weeks.
Ooh, that's a tough one. There are so many great storylines to follow, but if I had to choose one, I'd say I'm most intrigued by the quarterback battles that are shaping up.
Oh, like what?
Well, you've got the potential for some epic showdowns in both conferences. In the AFC, you could have Josh Allen and the Bills facing off against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, or maybe Joe Burrow and the Bengals taking on Justin Herbert and the Chargers. Those are the kinds of matchups that make the NFL playoffs so special.
The possibilities are endless.
Exactly. That's what makes this time of year so exciting. Every game has meaning. Every snap counts. The stakes are incredibly high.
That's what we live for as NFL fans.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground in this part of our deep dive, but there's still so much more to discuss. What are we looking at when we come back?
Well, in part 3, we're going to break down the specific playoff scenarios for each division. We'll look at tiebreakers, the must-win games, and the potential upsets that could shake things up. We'll also make some bold predictions for these last 2 weeks, including our picks for who will represent each conference in the Super Bowl. Sounds like a plan. All right, welcome back. So we've covered the major storylines and surprises from Week 16. Now let's get into those specific playoff scenarios you mentioned. Starting with the NFC North, it's down to the Lions and the Vikings. And you said tiebreakers are going to be crucial. So can you break down what each team needs to do to clinch the division?
Yeah, for the Lions, it's pretty straightforward. Win and they're in. They control their own destiny. They've got the 49ers this week, and then that big Week 18 matchup with the Vikings. If they win either of those games, they're guaranteed the division title.
So even if they lose to the 49ers this week, they can still win the division if they beat the Vikings in Week 18.
Exactly. Now, for the Vikings, it's a little more complicated. They need to win both of their remaining games against the Packers and the Bears. And even then, they need the Lions to lose to the 49ers this week. If that happens, the Week 18 matchup between the Lions and Vikings becomes a winner-take-all game.
Wow, so the Lions are in a good spot, but they can't afford to slip up. And the Vikings still have a shot, but they need some help. It doesn't get much more exciting than that. What about the AFC North? That race is just as tight, right?
Absolutely. The Ravens and Steelers are both at 10-5, but the Steelers have the tiebreaker because of their better conference record. It's going to be a close one.
The Steelers have the Chiefs this week, not an easy game, and the Ravens face the Texans, who, they've already clinched their division. But they're no pushover. How do you see this playing out?
Well, if the Steelers beat the Chiefs, they control their own destiny. But if they lose, things get interesting. The Ravens would then need to win both of their remaining games, including that Week 18 game against the Browns, which could be tricky.
So the Steelers need to win out, or the Ravens need to win out. A&D hope the Steelers drop a game. It's all coming down to the wire. And then there's the NFC South, which has been unpredictable all season long. What are the scenarios there?
The Falcons are in the driver's seat, but they've got a tough schedule ahead. They're on the road against the Commanders this week, and then they face the Panthers in Week 18. If they win both of those, they clinch the division.
But if they lose even one, the Buccaneers are still in it, right?
Exactly. The Buccaneers have 2 home games left, against the Panthers and then the Saints. If they win both and the Falcons lose even once, they take the division.
Okay, so those division races are going to be awesome to watch. Now, what about the wild card situation? The AFC especially looks like a total free-for-all.
Oh, it is. You've got 5 teams, the Chargers, Broncos, Colts, Dolphins, and Bengals, all fighting for 2 spots. And tiebreakers are going to be huge in this race. It's not just about wins and losses. It's about who you beat and how you do within your division.
So a loss to a divisional opponent could really hurt a team in this wildcard race.
Absolutely. And with so many head-to-head matchups left between these 5 teams, the standings could change completely in these last 2 weeks. It's going to be a wild finish.
I'm already stressed out just thinking about it. So we've talked about the scenarios, but now let's have some fun. Any bold predictions for these last 2 weeks?
Okay, here's one for you. I think we're going to see at least one major upset that completely shakes up the playoff picture. Maybe the Panthers pull off a surprise win against the Buccaneers. Or maybe the Dolphins sneak into the playoffs with a late surge. You just never know in the NFL.
I love it. Those unexpected twists are what make the NFL so great. All right, so before we wrap up this deep dive, I got to ask, after looking at all these scenarios and potential upsets, who do you have winning it all this year?
You know, I've been going back and forth, but I'm going to stick with my gut feeling. I think it's going to be a Bills versus Lions Super Bowl. I know, it sounds a bit crazy, especially with the Lions being such a young team. But I think they have the talent and the momentum to make a deep run. And the Bills, well, they've been so close for a few years now. I think this is their year.
I got to say, I'm starting to like that prediction. It would be an amazing matchup, Josh Allen against Jared Goff. 2 quarterbacks who have overcome so much to get to this point, and it would be a storybook ending for the Lions, a team that's gone through years of disappointment.
I know, right? Everyone loves a good underdog story.
All right, so I think we've covered everything, analyzed the playoff picture, the scenarios, even made some predictions. What more could you ask for?
I think we've given everyone all the tools they need to impress their friends and family with their NFL knowledge.
Exactly. So to all our listeners out there, thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the NFL playoff picture. We'll be back next week to break down all the action from Week 17 and get you ready for the playoffs. Until then, enjoy these last 2 weeks of the regular season. It's going to be a wild ride.